Her arm exploded forward, launching all those razor-sharp shards like a shotgun blast. I dove to the floor, rolling aside just fast enough to avoid most of it. My suit protected me from most of what hit, but I felt a sharp sting in my shoulder where something got through. Even as I scrambled back up, the shards were already flying back to her, reforming into that viciously spiked limb. Before I could react further, a low snarl caught my attention. The bitch was changing. Her body grew larger, muscles swelling as dark fur sprouted over her skin. Her clothes tore apart as she transformed into something halfway between human and wolf, her hands turning into claws, her face lengthening into a snarling muzzle. "A werewolf," Ricky whispered, her voice shaking. Tasha tried to hold the creature back while protecting Anton, but the bitch's strength now far outmatched hers. Christine was forced to take her on directly. My sister wrestled with the monstrous figure, struggling to keep those claws from tearing her apart. Though the bitch was faster, Christine managed to catch her arm and slam her through the meeting table, shattering it. While I was distracted, Dr. Glass attacked again. Her arm exploded once more into a wave of glass shrapnel. Jocelyn leapt in front of me, creating a pink energy shield that absorbed the full impact. As the shards flew back to reform Dr. Glass's arm yet again, I realized just how dangerous both enemies were. And we were running out of time. I spotted the man in green armor returning to the fight. His weapon was aimed directly at Jocelyn. She still had her energy shield raised toward Dr. Glass and wouldn't be able to block both attacks. I dove at her, knocking her down just before another black projectile slammed into where she'd been standing. "I've got this guy," I told her, pushing off the floor and charging at the armored man. I moved faster than he expected, grabbing his weapon right out of his hands. "Let's see if I can use this," I aimed and fired at Dr. Glass without hesitation. The blast struck her hard, throwing her back. She rose quickly, but cracks covered her glass torso, deep and spreading. She looked barely held together, as if one wrong move would shatter her completely. Still, she showed no sign of pain. "I don't have a human nervous system anymore," Dr. Glass said coldly as she sliced through the goo tendrils with the sharp edges of her damaged hand. In seconds, she'd freed herself, discarding the remains to the floor. Her expression was pure rage. "I despise being forced to fight like this, and all of you will pay for it." "Spare me," Jocelyn snapped, hurling a glowing pink dagger at her. It struck Dr. Glass dead center in her fractured chest, and shattered her completely. Her body broke apart, pieces crashing to the ground in all directions. "Looks like she finally fell to pieces," Jocelyn said flatly. I turned just in time to face the armored man who'd recovered and came at me swinging. My enhanced reflexes helped. I managed to slip aside, but his fist still grazed my cheek. The follow-up punch landed squarely in my stomach, knocking the wind out of me. "Damn it," I hissed, drawing my darkness tighter around my skin. I became a patch of moving blackness, not enough to blind him, but enough to obscure my movements. He didn't see my punch coming, though hitting him in the helmet did nothing but rattle my knuckles. "I hate that armor." Then I heard a savage howl. I glanced over. The bitch, in her werewolf form, was grappling with Christine. They weren't trading punches anymore. The bitch was slashing at her, forcing Christine to burn energy defending rather than absorbing attacks. Christine couldn't keep that up forever. Suddenly, the struggle shifted. The bitch and Christine, tangled together, smashed into Ricky, and all three of them tumbled out through the hole Anton had burned in the wall. "No!" I screamed, frozen in horror as I watched my sister fall. "I've got Ricky!" Tasha's arm shot through the hole, grabbing hold of Ricky before she could fall. She anchored herself against the floor, holding onto the doorframe with her other hand while Anton wrapped his arms around her to keep her steady. "Ricky!" Paul cried, running to help pull her back. The armored man tried to take advantage of my distraction, but Jocelyn was there, driving him back with her energy blades. They couldn't pierce his armor, but it was enough to buy me time. "Focus!" Jocelyn snapped. "But Christine," I started, heart pounding. "She's fine," Jocelyn cut me off. "She'll absorb the fall. Trust me." But that werewolf, not so much. I hesitated, then realized she was right. Relieved, I focused fully on the armored man. I expanded my shadow cloak slightly, blinding him just enough to mask my attacks. While he flailed wildly, I slipped behind him and found the latch on his helmet. One quick pull, and I ripped it free, revealing another bald head like the woman earlier. Now exposed, I didn't waste time. I drove my fists into his face over and over until he dropped. Meanwhile, Paul and Tasha had dragged Ricky safely back inside, though she looked shaken, sitting on the floor, trembling from shock. Tasha, Anton, and Paul hovered around her, checking her over. Jocelyn stood nearby, tense and watching. That's when I saw what Jocelyn had already noticed. The glass shards were moving. Every broken piece of Dr. Glass slid across the floor, pulling together, reforming into her body. But this time, she looked different. Her entire form was jagged, built from sharp shards rather than smooth glass. She wasn't fragile anymore, she was deadly. I won't let a bunch of children ruin everything I've built, Dr. Glass hissed. You've already cost me millions. I'll end this. Her body detonated. Shards of glass exploded outward in every direction. I hit the ground, trying to protect myself, but it wasn't enough. My suit absorbed most of the blast, but sharp pain flared in my thigh and upper arm where pieces pierced through. Around me, everyone else was down too. Our suits had protected us from the worst of it, but Paul and Ricky weren't wearing suits. Paul was bleeding from a cut across his face, and his clothes were bloodied from other wounds. Ricky screamed in pain, her back covered in jagged shards. Ricky's hit bad, Tasha called out, panic creeping into her voice as she cradled Ricky. Anton too, Paul said grimly, helping Anton sit up despite the fresh cuts visible across his side. Anton winced, forcing himself upright. I'll survive. I wasn't so sure. We were running out of options, and time. The scattered shards of glass zipped back together, reassembling Dr. Glass yet again. She stood there, smirking, already preparing to launch another attack. I realized with dread that if she kept this up, she'd eventually tear us all apart, piece by piece. Paul, Ricky, and Anton didn't even have the protection of armor. I couldn't let that happen. Everyone get out! I ordered. Find Jack and Becky. I'll handle her. I wished I sounded as confident as I was pretending to be. I'm staying with you, Jocelyn said instantly. I shook my head. I'm about to shut the lights off. Besides, they'll need you if more guards show up. She hesitated, then reluctantly nodded. Fine, but don't get yourself killed. Christine would never let me hear the end of it. With that, Jocelyn and the others fled, leaving me alone with Dr. Glass. She didn't attack immediately. She just watched, as if letting me make the first move. Maybe she didn't care to fight herself and preferred to let others do the dirty work. Maybe she thought I'd turn and run. I'm not running, I whispered to myself, heart pounding. Then Dr. Glass lunged. She swung at me like she meant to slap me, but with the jagged glass shards protruding from her hand, that would have torn me open. I dodged, then focused. I absorbed every bit of light in the room, plunging the space into total blackness. Everything shifted to the strange, colorless world I saw when I used my power. Shades of silver and shadow. I could see, but she couldn't. Dr. Glass immediately exploded. Shards of glass fired outward in every direction. I was ready. I ducked behind the remains of the shattered table, using a large slab of wood as cover. The barrage missed me. By the time I emerged, she was already reforming. I scowled. She was predictable. Blast, reform, repeat. And as soon as her body finished knitting itself back together, she pivoted toward me, and fired shards from both arms, straight at me. I scrambled for cover again, shocked. She shouldn't have been able to see me in the dark. She fired again, tracking me perfectly. Oh no, I breathed. Blinding her was useless. Even with the lights gone, she could still track me. My tricks weren't working. "How are you seeing me?" I demanded. "I don't need eyes," she said smugly. "I sense everything from every shard I'm made of." I froze. The floor was littered with tiny glass fragments. My suit, my hair, probably covered in microscopic shards from earlier attacks. She wasn't seeing me, she was feeling me. Everywhere. Another blast of shards forced me to dive aside again. I used a chair to block some of it, but Dr. Glass charged. She slashed at me with her jagged arm, forcing me to dodge, swing the chair like a weapon, and shatter most of her body once more. But that last attack drained the last of my stored energy. My reflexes dropped back to normal. My enhanced speed and agility were gone. I felt it instantly, the shift. Suddenly slow, clumsy. I slipped on the glass-covered floor and hit hard. Dr. Glass attacked again. I couldn't move in time. Her shards tore into me. I curled up, covering my head, but I still felt them stabbing into my arms, legs, side. I screamed, pain overwhelming me. My darkness shut off. The lights flickered back to life. As I lay there, shaking and bloody, Dr. Glass reassembled herself once more. All the shards on the floor, and the tiny ones clinging to me, shot back to her reforming body. With my power down, she didn't need to spread herself out to track me anymore. "Oh no," I whispered, terror creeping in. She stood there, whole again. Stronger than before. And I had nothing left. Dr. Glass laughed softly. She could see I was finished. I couldn't dodge. I couldn't run. I couldn't even stand properly. But instead of attacking, her body shifted. The jagged shards softened, melting together until her glass body was smooth again. Perfect. Seamless. Like she'd never been touched. "You've cost me far too much," Dr. Glass said coldly. "You and your little friends have ruined my work, wasted my resources. I should have disposed of you sooner. Now I'll correct that mistake." "We've already exposed your lies about the contamination," I said weakly. "You think the police won't notice?" She smiled faintly. "I no longer care what they think." Dr. Glass didn't answer. Instead, she calmly bent down and retrieved the pistol she'd dropped earlier. "This is a far cleaner method," she remarked, leveling the gun at me like it was just a tool for business. She pulled the trigger. The sound and the searing pain hit me at the same time. The force of the shot knocked me off my feet and slammed me to the floor. My stomach burned. For a terrifying moment, I was sure I was dying. Fear and pure survival instinct flooded me. Then I remembered, Genius said the suit was bulletproof. Trembling, I forced myself to glance down. There was no blood, no hole. The costume had stopped the bullet, but not the force behind it. "Damn," I whispered. The bullet hadn't pierced, but the impact still felt like I'd been punched by a truck. I barely had time to process the relief before fear took over again. I'd survived one shot, but the next one? That one might be aimed at my head. Dr. Glass, apparently thinking I was dead, turned away. She didn't realize she'd failed. With everything I had left, I pushed myself up. Slow. Painful. Shaking. But I stood. She turned and froze, stunned to see me still standing. She raised the pistol for another shot. I didn't give her the chance. I charged her, slamming my full weight into her. She stumbled back as I forced her toward the shattered wall, and then shoved her straight through the gaping hole. She fell. I stood there, panting, barely able to believe what I'd done. I'd just shoved someone out of a building. Someone who, moments earlier, had almost killed me. But she wasn't normal. She'd survived worse. All I'd really done was get her away from me. All I did was buy time, I muttered, my voice shaking. I stood frozen, emotions crashing down on me all at once. Just weeks ago, I was a regular guy. Now I was a girl in a superhero suit, fighting supervillains like some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Relief. Fear. Anger. Confusion. They all tangled together, choking me from the inside out. Before I knew it, tears ran down my cheeks. What's wrong with me? I whispered, wiping my face, confused and embarrassed. Was this what Becky felt like, crying for no reason? Then someone burst through the door. I snapped around, ready to summon my darkness, but it was Christine. She scanned the room quickly, relaxing when she saw it was over. They said you were fighting Dr. Glass alone, she said, stepping toward me, worry all over her face. I came to help. I threw her out the window, I said weakly, gesturing toward the hole in the wall. Christine raised her eyebrows. Ouch. That's a decent fall. She flexed her arms, her expression brightening. You wouldn't believe how strong I feel after absorbing the impact from my own fall. I'm pretty sure I could toss a car. Right. Because that's such a useful skill, I muttered, trying to force a smile. Then I frowned. And what about the bitch? Did she survive? Christine sighed. Yeah. She was hanging on to me when I hit the ground, so she survived too. But once she realized how strong I was, she ran. She stepped closer, her concern returning as she touched my cheek, brushing away one of my tears. Are you okay? I don't know. The words came out honestly. I don't even know why I'm crying. I mean, I just threw the bad guy out the window. Shouldn't I feel better? I think everything just caught up with you, Christine said softly, pulling me into a hug. Somehow, it felt comforting rather than awkward. Careful, I winced. The moment she touched me, I remembered every injury. The black goo round that bruised my ribs, the gunshot impact, the cuts, the bruises. I hurt everywhere. Christine eased her grip but teased, you always made fun of girls for mood swings. Guess it's your turn. Bite me, I said quietly, too tired to argue. I hate karma. She stepped back but kept a hand on my shoulder. At least Jocelyn proves being a girl isn't so bad. She seems okay with it. I blinked in surprise. She told you? Yeah, Christine blushed deeply. We were talking, and she's nice. I chuckled, nodding. You like her, don't you? Christine's eyes widened, but I quickly added, I've seen how you look at her. You're starting to like girls, aren't you? Christine hesitated, then whispered, yeah. I think so. Then she glanced at me nervously. What about you? I don't know, I admitted. I haven't really felt anything. Not since I changed. Silence stretched between us for a moment before Christine said softly, come on. Let's get out of here. Before I could argue, she picked me up like I weighed nothing and jumped straight out of the hole in the wall. I screamed the whole way down. We hit the ground softly, as if she'd just stepped off a curb. Then she set me down gently. You absolute maniac, I gasped, heart racing. Christine just grinned. Hey, you used to love adrenaline rushes. You and Miles did enough stupid stuff for that. Bite me, I snapped, but I couldn't hide the shaky relief. Then I turned and froze. 3 large helicopters were parked around the building, surrounded by at least 24 heavily armed soldiers in black armor. But these weren't the same soldiers we'd been fighting earlier. Printed in bold white letters across their backs were the letters DAD. What the? I started, then noticed the ambulance parked nearby. My friends were gathered around it, getting medical treatment. Genius called them in, Jocelyn said as she jogged up to join us. They're from the Developed Affairs Department. Real government agents. My dad deals with that all the time. They're the agency that handles anything involving developed people. Hence the name, I muttered, still trying to wrap my head around everything. A middle-aged man with white hair, dressed in a black suit, walked toward us, radiating that government official vibe. A woman with short black hair followed a few steps behind him, carrying a kind of quiet intensity that made Jocelyn watch her carefully. "I'm Agent Rice," the man said, glancing between Christine and me. He gestured to his partner. "This is Agent Briggs. I hear you've been dealing with someone named Dr. Glass." "Yeah," I replied weakly. I threw her out a window. I motioned to the pile of glass shards scattered across the ground. "You might want to sweep her up before she pulls herself together again." Agent Briggs gave the shards a long look, then shook her head and walked off. "Tell me everything about Dr. Glass and her operation," Agent Rice said, focusing back on us. "I think Vicky needs a medic before you interrogate her," Jocelyn said firmly, casting a worried look at me. Rice didn't argue, though he looked less than thrilled. He nodded slightly. I didn't argue either. I could feel every injury in my body, but right now, curiosity was keeping me upright. "Genius gave me a full report," Rice continued. "You don't need to worry, we won't be quarantining anyone. But we do need details about Dr. Glass and the PF-78 canisters." Jocelyn met his gaze calmly. "Why don't you tell us what you're really after here?" Rice hesitated, then said, "A while back, we cleared out an abandoned site and found traces of PF-78. It was near where Lady Hex first showed up. We suspect she was exposed to it. We hired a scientist to analyze the mutagen, but then she disappeared. Along with every sample." Rice paused, suddenly scowling at Jocelyn. "And if you try using your powers on me again, I'll have a long conversation with your father." Jocelyn winced and backed off immediately. "Sorry," she said softly. "Was her name Dr. Sheridan?" I asked, remembering what McNeil had called Dr. Glass. "Someone said that was her real name." Rice's expression darkened. "Elizabeth Sheridan." "Yes. We suspected she became Dr. Glass. Now we know. She's been using her old government credentials to fool local authorities into thinking she worked for Dad and the CDC." His tone turned sharp. "That won't happen again." "I hope not," Christine said, her voice tight. "I still can't believe people just believed her without any proof." Before Rice could respond, his earpiece crackled. He paused, listening, then said quietly, "Good job." Turning back to us, he reported, "My team just recovered 2 canisters of PF-78. "That's good," Christine said, visibly relieved. She said there were only 2 left after the one that hit us. Rice's expression darkened further. "She stole 5. My stomach dropped. "So, 2 canisters are still out there." Rice didn't answer. He didn't need to. I suddenly realized how much this whole operation must have cost: soldiers, security, this entire facility. Had she sold the missing canisters to fund it? I shivered. Not our problem anymore, though. With Dr. Glass defeated and our names cleared, it was someone else's mess to clean up. Rice turned away, moving off to speak with his agents about the recovered canisters, leaving our formal debriefing for later. I was grateful for that. My body was barely holding itself upright. Christine wrapped an arm around me, supporting me as we walked toward the ambulance so I could finally get treated, and, hopefully, something for the pain. "Damn, you look wrecked," Becky said when she saw me. But she was smiling, and she gave me a thumbs up. "Glad you made it," Paul said, looking like he wanted to clap me on the back but thought better of it. "I was seriously freaking out when you stayed behind." "Same here," Ricky added, wincing as a medic worked on her battered back. Jack stood near Ricky, hovering protectively while the medic worked on her injuries. The look he gave the medic caught me off guard, almost like jealousy. It hit me then, the big, tough, not-so-handsome Jack might actually have feelings for Ricky. Whether she felt the same or could ever look past his appearance, I had no idea. But honestly, I hoped he found whatever happiness he could. Life wasn't going to get any easier for him. If anything, his road looked much rougher than mine. "You might be a girl now," Jack said, almost grudgingly, "but you've got guts for taking on that psycho alone." He paused, then added, smirking, "Of course, I could have flattened her without all the drama." I gave him a small nod, then glanced over to where Anton was being loaded onto a stretcher. From the looks of it, he was okay, just precautionary. Tasha stood beside him, holding his hand tightly. I scanned the area for the 3 others Jack and Becky had rescued. I spotted them off to one side, speaking with a few dad agents. My stomach twisted with anger. I could only hope every single person involved in killing my classmates paid for it: Donnie, Ed, Michelle, Nita. For lives taken for nothing. "Excuse me," a voice interrupted softly. I turned, startled, to find a medic standing beside me. He looked around my age, early 20s at most. Tall, broad-shouldered, fit. His uniform stretched just slightly across his chest and arms. Without meaning to, I stared. And kept staring. Until I realized what I was doing. Oh no. A flush of heat crept through my body. A strange, awkward flutter. My stomach dropped. Oh no. "I can treat your cuts now, but you'll need to remove your uniform," the medic said professionally. "If you'd prefer, I can call over a female medic, or I can cut around the injuries." "I'll wait until I get to the hospital," I stammered, feeling painfully awkward. "I'm just bruised mostly." He nodded without question and moved on to help someone else. I watched him walk away, feeling like I'd just swallowed ice. "What's wrong?" Jocelyn's voice snapped me out of it. She was watching me with concern. I swallowed hard. "It's official." She frowned. "What is?" "Bright red," I muttered. "I'm not a lesbian." Jocelyn burst out laughing. "At least you know now," she said, draping an arm lightly over my shoulders, careful to avoid my injuries. "Freaky at first, I know, but honestly? It's not as bad as it seems. You'll get used to it." I nodded slowly but kept staring down at myself, the weight of a new, far more personal fear settling over me. Dr. Glass was gone. Her soldiers were defeated. But now I had to go home. And face Mom and Dad. The thought left me colder than anything else that had happened. I stood silently in front of the full-length mirror in my parents' bedroom, staring at my reflection. I wasn't looking at myself the way I usually did. I was trying to see what everyone else saw when they looked at me, not what I felt when I saw my own face. I was dressed in black slacks and a dark blue top, something modest enough to cover me but fitted enough to show off my curves. My mom had insisted on buying me the shoes I was wearing, simple, decent, with just a small heel, barely more than a pair of cowboy boots, but apparently considered training heels according to Christine, or Chris now. She said they were to ease me toward eventually walking in real heels. And the body under the clothes? Honestly, it wasn't bad. D-cup chests, bigger than my mom's, bigger than Chris had before the change. I was starting to get used to guys staring at me in public, though it'd be a while before I was actually comfortable with it. "Not bad," I muttered, running my fingers through my shoulder-length black hair. I'd had it trimmed and styled yesterday, so it at least looked neat and feminine instead of messy. Looking at myself now, I couldn't deny it, I looked good. I'd figured that out already from how guys reacted to me. And while that still left me feeling awkward, there was also this strange sense of pride buried somewhere in there. If I was stuck being a girl for life, it was at least nice to know I'd ended up an attractive one. It had been 2 weeks since Christine and I came home with our names cleared. Mom and Dad insisted they'd never believed the lie about us losing our minds after the green fog, but the guilt in their eyes told me otherwise. We didn't push them on it. They'd been freaked out about our transformations too, especially about the gender swaps. For a while, it was easier for them to assume Chris was me, and I was Chris. We could have gone along with it. We didn't. Telling them the truth felt necessary, even if it confused them. Sometimes they still slipped up and called me Christine by mistake, or him Vic. During the chaos of being locked up and running for our lives, I hadn't had the time, or the privacy, to face my body changes. The last 2 weeks at home gave me nothing but time to figure it all out. Time to get used to people treating me differently. Jocelyn had warned me it would happen. I hadn't believed her. She was right. Everything's just a lot, I sighed quietly. Leaving the mirror behind, I headed to the living room where Chris was sitting with Dad. His hair was cut short now, a proper guy's haircut. He'd adapted fast. Faster than me, at least. He was trying to learn how to be a guy. And succeeding. Watching him joke with Dad, I felt a little envious. He looked stronger than I'd ever been as a boy. His powers were better too. And yeah, he was probably jealous that I'd ended up more stacked than he'd been as a girl. I thought about my powers too. I'd played around with them a little since the Dr. Glass fight, but nothing serious. Chris, though? I knew he'd been training in secret. Testing his limits. I probably should have been doing the same. What stunned most though was seeing how close he and Dad had gotten. They'd always been distant, but now? They connected. Meanwhile, Dad seemed unsure what to say to me anymore. Like part of him wasn't sure how to treat me. Like being a girl somehow made me less his kid. I wish I could say Mom stepped in to fill the gap, but she didn't. She was trying, sure. Helping me figure out how to be a girl, but more in a way that felt like she was pushing me to fit a mold she thought I should want, not letting me figure things out at my own pace. Jocelyn was the only one who understood. She got it. She'd been visiting every couple days, and every time I saw her, it felt like a relief. She never pressured me. Never judged. She didn't even tell me where she lived, she said she needed to protect her family. I believed her. Maybe someday I'll introduce you, she'd told me 2 days ago, when we last talked. You'd probably like my cousin Ryan. Right then, the doorbell rang. I headed over, and smiled for real when I saw who it was. Jocelyn. I'd been thinking about her, and somehow, there she was. Hey, Vicky, she said warmly. Jocelyn, I greeted, opening the door wider. Come in. She surprised me with a hug. Good to see you too. Then, grinning, she added, I wasn't nearly this huggy when I was a guy. She glanced over and spotted Chris. Her eyes lingered for just a moment longer than normal. Hey, Chris. How's it going? Not bad, Chris replied, though he glanced away quickly, his face turning bright red after sneaking a look at Jocelyn. Chris still hasn't figured out how to check out girls without getting caught, I joked to Jocelyn, who laughed while Chris's blush deepened. A few minutes later, Jocelyn and I retreated to my room for some privacy. I felt a little self-conscious as soon as we stepped inside. The place looked like it couldn't decide if it belonged to a boy or a girl. I'd taken down the old poster of the swimsuit model from behind the door, but hadn't gotten around to putting anything else up yet. My skateboard sat in the corner, while a bra hung awkwardly from the dresser. If Jocelyn noticed, she didn't comment. She just plopped onto my bed like she owned the place. So, what have you been up to? Not much, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. Got it trimmed yesterday. Mom bought me a makeup kit. Not that I know what to do with it. No problem, Jocelyn said cheerfully. I'll teach you. The weirdest part is not wiping your face every time you feel something on it. I nodded, glancing at her. She wasn't wearing any makeup herself, not that she needed it. Come to think of it, I rarely saw her wear any at all. Other than that, everything's just weird, I said softly. Surreal, you know? I mean, you're the only one who actually understands what it's like. Not exactly, Jocelyn said carefully. I blinked. What do you mean? Genius told me she knows other people like us, Jocelyn explained. People who've gone through gender switches. But she won't share details, says she doesn't want to break their trust. There's more of us? I asked, stunned. Jocelyn nodded. My dad knows someone too. One of his friends swapped bodies with a woman. Whatever happened, it must have been bad. My dad won't say much, but some of his friends died. He's been trying to get me to meet her, to show her she's not alone. But she's been avoiding him. That sucks, I said quietly, realizing how lucky I was to have both Chris and Jocelyn around. The thought of going through all this completely alone was terrifying. I'm starting to think there's way more people like us than anyone realizes, Jocelyn admitted. But most guys who turn into girls probably keep it quiet. Too embarrassed to let anyone know. Yeah. I get that, I admitted softly. It wasn't like I could hide what had happened to me, not after the whole quarantine situation. Jocelyn shifted gears. What about Chris? She asked, but her casual tone didn't match the look in her eyes. I hesitated. We hadn't known each other that long, but Jocelyn had become one of my closest friends. If I couldn't trust her, who could I? He had it rough the first few days, I said. A lot of the girls he used to hang out with cut him off. Some called him a freak. I caught him crying once or twice. Jocelyn frowned, visibly upset. But then, he just kind of accepted it, I continued. He threw himself into being a guy. He's making new friends. He actually seems happier now. That's good, Jocelyn said softly, her shoulders relaxing. And he's been talking about becoming a superhero, I added wryly. Some of the others too. They think we should team up. Jocelyn's expression turned serious. That's not something you just try for fun. It's not a hobby, it's a life. Once you're in, you're in. Even if you quit, you'll always carry it with you. And enemies don't care whether you've retired. I know, I said quietly. Chris is all in. Becky too. Paul hasn't said, but I think he's leaning that way. Jack? No surprise there. I wasn't shocked Becky wanted to go the hero route, even if her codename, Crybaby, still felt strange. But Jack? He was the least surprising of all. He wanted to hit things and have people cheer him on for it. And frankly, what else could he do? He only had one good hand now, and his appearance meant blending in wasn't an option. Maybe being a hero was the only way he'd ever be seen as anything but a freak. Ricky said no way, I continued, grinning a little at the memory. She says it's too dangerous. Her powers don't exactly help in a fight. True, Jocelyn agreed. But she could still help from behind the scenes. She'd be invaluable as support. Maybe, I said thoughtfully. Especially if it means staying close to Jack. I think there's something happening there. Jocelyn made a face. Better her than me. Anton's unsure, I said, shifting focus. He wants to help people, but he also wants to go to college. Says he doesn't think he can do both. I think Tasha's waiting to see what he decides. Jocelyn looked at me carefully. And what about you? Are you going to suit up again? Be Velvet? I'm not sure, I admitted softly. I stared at the floor for a long moment before adding, using my powers, it's weird. Fighting in the dark like that, taking down people who couldn't even see me, it made me feel unstoppable. Almost like I couldn't lose, except when it was Dr. Glass. I shivered at the memory. It's exciting. But terrifying too. Yeah, Jocelyn said quietly, her expression serious. It is. I figure I've got enough going on right now, I told her with a faint, tired smile, gesturing at myself. I don't think I need to add risking my life to that list. Probably the smartest thing you've said all day, she replied with a smile. Seriously, you don't want to jump into that world without thinking it through. Once you go down that road, it's hard to step back. Then, her grin widened. You can always change your mind later, once you're more comfortable with everything. What about you? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. I just wanted to hear her say it. Jocelyn shrugged like it was obvious. I've always known I'd follow the family business. But my dad's making me wait until I'm 18 before I go official. He wasn't exactly thrilled about me running off to help you guys, but I think he's proud too. I studied her carefully, trying to imagine what it must have been like growing up in a house full of superheroes. I couldn't picture it. Then something clicked in my mind, something I'd been meaning to ask her for a while. When you saved us that first time, you said you sensed we were in trouble, I said slowly. But later, you told me your powers only work on people you know. We'd never met before. Jocelyn's smile faded. She hesitated, looking uncomfortable. Normally, yeah, that's true. But... I leaned forward. But what? I've got another power I don't really talk about, she admitted after a long pause. I don't even tell my family about it much. People get weird. I frowned. What kind of power? I get dreams, she said softly. About the future. I blinked. Come again? She gave me a weary look. Yeah. That's pretty much how everyone reacts. I mean, actual visions of the future? I asked, still trying to wrap my head around it. Sort of. They're flashes. Glimpses. And I don't get to choose what I see. I'm not even sure if it's the real future or just the most likely one. But, about a month ago, I had one. And you were in it. Me? Jocelyn nodded, then glanced down at the floor, suddenly awkward. Yeah. As you are now. A girl. I just stared at her, stunned. It was a wedding, she continued softly. My wedding, actually. I looked a little older, you know, a little more grown up. She gestured at herself vaguely. And you were there. Standing next to me as my maid of honor. I sat frozen as she glanced up at me. I couldn't see much else, Jocelyn said gently. But I knew you were my best friend. I think that's how my powers sync to you and why I could sense when you were in trouble. Holy crap, I breathed, feeling the weight of her words settle over me. That's how you knew I wouldn't turn back into a guy. She nodded quietly. I've never really had a best friend before, Jocelyn admitted softly, her voice vulnerable now. Not outside of my family, anyway. I've always had to keep people at arm's length, couldn't let anyone know too much. But when I saw you in that dream, I knew. I had to meet you. I didn't even know you were like me until I saw you in person. I didn't know what to say. I just whispered, wow. There's one more thing, Jocelyn said hesitantly, cheeks bright red. She avoided my gaze as she blurted, Chris was the groom. I almost choked. Wait, what? Please don't tell him, she begged, looking mortified. Please. Don't tell anyone. I won't, I promised quickly, shaking my head in disbelief. The thought of telling Chris that he was destined to marry Jocelyn? No way. He'd barely adjusted to being into girls at all. That'd wreck him. And honestly, Jocelyn didn't look any more comfortable with it. So, you're going to be my sister-in-law, I said awkwardly, not sure what else to say. One day, Jocelyn replied, blushing fiercely. Maybe. If that future's real. Must be weird, seeing the future like that. You have no idea, she said softly. And most of the time, it's useless. Just tiny fragments that don't make any sense until it's too late to do anything. We sat in silence after that, both of us unsure what to say next. The whole conversation had gotten too heavy. I decided it was time to change that. "Come on," I said, getting up and grabbing my skateboard. I haven't gone boarding since before all this. Let me show you some of the old tricks I used to pull with Miles. Jocelyn smiled, standing up. Sounds good to me. I miss doing normal stuff like that. And with that, we headed down the street to a spot perfect for skating. For a little while, we weren't talking about powers, futures, or transformations. We weren't thinking about periods, relationships, or superhero names. For once, we were just two friends, doing something simple. And for now, that was enough. The prisoner sat cross-legged on the cold metal floor of his cell, still as a statue, staring silently at the blank wall ahead. His hard, unblinking eyes flicked occasionally toward the thick door, a door that had remained shut far too long. Escape filled his thoughts constantly, even if he knew deep down that it was nearly impossible. This cell wasn't just any cell. Its walls were constructed from one of the strongest metals known, buried deep within Alpha Core of Mount Prometheus, the highest security wing reserved for the world's most dangerous and powerful supervillains. Security measures here were beyond extreme, barriers against teleportation, defenses against phase shifting, and countless other failsafes. And Alpha Core's protocols made even the rest of Mount Prometheus look unprepared. But none of that angered him as much as the collar locked around his neck. Heavy, unyielding, and suffocating, the device stripped him of his powers and left him as helpless as any ordinary man. That collar symbolized his defeat more than the walls themselves. Once, he'd been known as Scott Vanguard. But he hadn't thought of himself by that name in years. To himself, he was still Force, the greatest superhero the world had ever seen. Force had once stood at the peak of the hero community. Then everything crumbled. His partner and lover had abandoned him for another man, one he considered a false hero. He had endured that betrayal with dignity. But what followed had broken him. Defeated and humiliated, first by that pale-skinned witch, then by some insignificant sidekick, and worst of all, by a teenage girl. That last defeat haunted him. No villain had ever managed what she had. Worse still, his friends in the Protectorate, those he once trusted, turned against him too. At first, Force had believed it was mind control. Surely no sane ally would betray him without reason. But over time, he'd accepted the truth: jealousy. They'd all feared being overshadowed by him, feared watching their legends fade beside his greatness. So they'd torn him down. Spread lies. Turned the public against him. And locked him here, in chains. But he hadn't given up. There had to be a weakness in the system, a flaw somewhere in the fortress's perfect design. Every prison had one. The villain known as the Key had proved that countless times by breaking others free from Mount Prometheus. Though Force doubted anyone like the Key would come for him. Then, Force's eyes narrowed. He wasn't alone anymore. He sprang to his feet, spinning toward the two strangers who had somehow appeared inside his cell without so much as opening the door. Both wore black. The taller of the two, thin and formal, was dressed in what resembled a Victorian-era suit, leaning casually on a black cane. His slicked-back black hair and round, dark glasses gave him an unsettling, composed appearance. The other figure, more imposing, wore dark armor that resembled a high-tech ninja, complete with red glowing eyes under a partial helmet. "Who are you?" Force demanded, more curious than threatened. He'd seen stranger visitors. "I am known as Mr. Umbra," the man with the cane said with a faint, polite smile. He gestured toward his silent companion. "My associate is Mr. Shade. He doesn't speak your language well, so I speak for us both." "And why are you here?" Force asked coldly. "Straight to the point." "Good," Umbra replied. "We're here because you are a man whose talents have been denied their proper respect." Force gave a subtle nod. At least someone recognized the truth. Go on. My employer holds your abilities in very high regard, Umbra continued smoothly. He sent us to arrange a meeting. He believes a man like you is wasted in a cell. I was the greatest hero alive, Force said flatly. That's not opinion. That's fact. Umbra's smile sharpened. As a mutual acquaintance of mine might say, pride has always been your defining sin. They envied me, Force growled. His voice cracked with tightly restrained fury. They betrayed me. Lied to the world. Turned everyone against me. Umbra's voice dropped, cold and deliberate. If you cannot reclaim your place as the world's greatest hero, then why not embrace your role as its greatest villain? Force fell silent for several seconds, weighing that sentence. The very idea would have revolted him once. But not anymore. His friends had made that choice for him. The lines between hero and villain were already blurred beyond recognition. I could be, he whispered. Umbra's smile widened. Then come with us. Our employer will give you everything you deserve, respect, resources, and revenge. Force hesitated only a moment longer before nodding, just once. If they insisted on calling him a villain, then so be it. Fine, Force said at last, knowing this decision couldn't be undone. Oddly, he felt a sense of relief as he said it, a dark kind of freedom. Take me to your employer. Umbra nodded once, then gestured toward the back wall. Shadows stirred, swirling and folding in on themselves until they formed a vortex of shifting blackness. Without hesitation, Shade stepped straight into the portal and disappeared. Force didn't know where it led, but he didn't hesitate either. Without a word, he followed. In the next instant, Force found himself standing inside a massive chamber, its walls seemingly carved from black stone. People stood silently against the edges of the room, their eyes fixed on him. A few faces sparked vague recognition. One was a man dressed in deep red, gripping a black staff, a known villain called Thorn. Another was a sleek, silver-skinned woman who looked unsettlingly similar to Silica, the android hero believed to have passed years ago. Beside them stood a woman clad in tight black leather, her crimson coat draped over her shoulders like a mantle of blood. But Force barely glanced at them. His focus locked instantly on the figure seated at the center of the room, the one occupying a throne made entirely of human skulls. She was young. Blonde hair spilled from beneath a dark hood. She wore a costume of purple and black, reinforced with gunmetal gray plating. A metallic skull sat at her waist as a belt ornament, while a loose chain hung at her side. The black cloak over her shoulders fastened with two brooches, each shaped like a skull. Force froze, every instinct screaming a warning. He'd never seen this woman before, but her outfit, her presence, they were unmistakable. Who are you? He demanded, a rare flicker of unease cracking through his voice. Umbra and Shade flanked him silently. Then, both men spoke together. Their voices echoed like a hollow threat. Nevermore. Don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content.